Hi guys, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to talk about two books. So we're going to talk about Family Curse and Menagerie. So let's start with Family Curse, which is a FF contemporary horror paranormal romance, and it's Rattling Bones, Outfoxing the Paranormal Book 2 by Jordan L. Hawk. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know I love this author, and this one did not disappoint. I gave it 4 stars. And even though it was more on the spooky side than romance side, I couldn't put it down. It was so good. So, this is the second. The first book was Outfoxing the Paranormal, where we're introduced to Nigel, who is a parapsychologist for the University of Duke, and his funding is about to be cut. He goes by him, he pronouns, and his funding is about to be cut until this wealthy benefactor shows up and is like, I will do a huge donation to save your department if you do something for me. You know what I mean? Because, which I liked in the first book, because I think people don't forget how rough university and academia can be, how cutthroat. Anyway, so her terms were Nigel has to work with this group called Outfoxing the Paranormal. They have a YouTube channel that they go ghost hunting and things like that. And the head of it, the face of it, is Oscar Fox. He introduced in the first book, he's like a ex-college quarterback. He's very big, he's very handsome, kind of that all-American boy. And then you find out it was just, football was just a way to get to college, and he always wanted to be an accountant. He loves numbers, he loves spreadsheets. I liked that. That was cute. I liked that this jock had a lot of depth, because like real life people who are sportsmen do. Speaking as someone whose dad was a jock, he had a lot of depth. So I like that. Now we find out in the first book that, because it was a while ago, so I'm just giving you a quick recap. And for me, this was a 4-star. Sorry, forgot to say. So I'm so tired today. How are you guys? I'm exhausted. How about you? No? Okay, good. Has a normal sleep schedule. What is that like? Okay, so we find out in the first book that Oscar actually has a paranormal gift. He could see ghosts. He's a medium, but his whole life he's been ignoring it, and he's had it since he was a kid, but he just thinks he was going crazy, right? So this book picks up a few months after that. Nigel and Oscar are still together. They're still super cute, very supportive of each other, very respectful of each other. I love it. You know what I mean? Their banter and conversations, it's really cute, especially since Nigel, who's the parapsychologist, is super awkward when it comes to people. He's very socially awkward, and I love that the author still kept this in the book, and Nigel still has their quirky charm to them, which is really, really cute. It's super cute. And how Oscar doesn't get offended or anything like that. He thinks it's adorable because he knows Nigel is not good with people. You know what I mean? He's good with dead things. He's good with paranormal stuff. So, in this is the Family Curse. So basically, in this, the whole group, the whole YouTube channel crew, they're going to Oscar's family, you know, for a late Christmas. You know, Nigel's going to meet the parents. It's been like 3 months since the first book. So they've been together for 3 months, and Nigel's going to meet the parents. Also, they're bringing the crew because Oscar wanted they all thought it would be better for Oscar to go home because there's this ghost he remembers as a kid that seemed pretty calm, like didn't do anything to the house, never, you know, wasn't an evil, problematic ghost. They just sort of very passive, and they thought that would be a good ghost for Oscar to train on because he's super new to his gift, you know, because up until this point, he thought he was crazy, and you just feel so bad for him, right? Turns out his grandmother, his Mima, I love that word, his grandmother was put in a mental institution for being crazy. So his dad, who is the son of his grandmother, so, you know, I explained that backwards. But anyway, his dad hates anything to do with paranormal, doesn't want Oscar talking about it, doesn't want it in his house. So, like, completely stubborn argument, right? And Oscar's like, well, I'm going to figure it out. Anyway, because it turns out they uncovered some tapes from his Mima's seances back in the 70s. So I thought that was really cute that, like, his grandma, his Mima, had, even though she died in the institution long before Oscar was born, there was still this odd connection because she was basically doing what he does, you know? He does the paranormal YouTube channel, and she basically did the 70s equivalent of that. So I thought that was, I don't know, that really, I liked that, you know? So, and through these tapes, you know, he witnessed his, right before his grandmother was put into the asylum, she goes to this distillery that apparently runs in the family, like it's runs in the family in the Colbert side, which is his Mima side, her patriarchal side, and basically saw her get attacked by a ghost and, like, lost her mind. You know what I mean? So they have to figure, so he's determined to figure out what happened, right? And through their investigation, they find out that everybody who had Colbert blood, every 25 years, one of them is killed. And and of course, that 25-year mark is coming up on the new year, and they're, again, a late Christmas. So they just have like a day or two. And it's either going to be him or his dad. So, you know, he's scrambling to find it out and figure this out. In the midst of all this, he finds out, like, trying to connect to his Mima's matriarchal side, which was a long line of spiritualists, you know, so he's trying to connect with that, and it was spooky. Like, I got scared, especially since when I was reading it, it was nighttime and it was raining outside, and I was like, oh, this is like the perfect, like, spooky environment to read this. And I was like, I had a fun time being, like, scared because the descriptions of the situations and the rooms that they're in and the ghosts got me. I was like, oh my god, I felt like the hairs on the back of my neck stood up and stuff like that. And then this author does this to me in the middle of something spooky. Boom, a heartfelt, touching moment with Oscar and his dad, you know, them coming to accord and really having a heart to heart. And it was so, like, I was like, aww. And then boom, back to the scary. So I had so much fun. I'm enjoying this series, even though it's just the second book, but I'm enjoying the series so far, the Outfoxing the Paranormal. It's just, if you're looking for a romance, but that has a really intense, like, spooky, haunted horror movie vibe, definitely, you know what I mean? I would definitely recommend it. It was a lot of fun. So that was that one. And then the Menagerie. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I'm dog sitting another Pupperino. She's a Shih Tzu Maltese mix. She's feisty. She's hilarious. So sorry about that. Okay, so the second book, this was a 3-star for me. It started off so good, but then I'll rant about it in a second. So this is the Menagerie, and this is A Kiss at Midnight by Eloisa James. And, like, look how beautiful the cover. And yes, it's a Cinderella retelling. I already knew that going into it, you know. And then look at this step back. Oh, so pretty. I love how it kind of has this, with all the blue and the white, kind of has this almost dreamlike quality to it. So it's a beautiful cover. And I really liked the story up until the 3rd act. Like, I really liked it. So this is Kate. She's our Cinderella. Her evil stepmother, Marianne, is a bitch. But what I really, really liked, Victoria is the stepsister. Victoria is a sweetheart. She is very kind, but very dumb. And, like, I'm not just saying that. She's not very intelligent, but she's very kind, you know? She, so that's, like, I really loved that, how this author wasn't villainizing every woman in the story just to do it. You know what I mean? So Kate is forced to take Victoria's place at a big to-do. Now, why is she forced to take her stepsister's place? And this book came out, hold on, let me see how long ago this book came out. Okay, 2010. So, spoilers, okay? It's not a new release, so I'm not gonna be cautious about spoilers. So, Victoria has 3 Malteses. And she was feeding one meat from her mouth, and they're not trained. And getting the meat, the dog bit her lip because, yeah. See, this is what I'm saying. She's not a very intelligent person. So she can't go to this big ball, and she has to because her fiance, who's forgot his real name, she always calls him Algie, so I'm gonna call him Algie. His uncle is the prince of this foreign country, like the youngest prince, you know. But he's like 18 and he wants to marry Victoria, and his mother was like, the only way you're marrying Victoria is if your uncle Prince Gabriel approves of her. So Victoria has to go to this ball, but she has like a bleeding, infecting lip. So she's like, I can't go because she's considered the raving beauty of the season, you know? And by the description, she sounds very pretty too. So she can't, and she has to go because she's pregnant, when the stepmother was explaining that Victoria was pregnant, Victoria was like, I still don't understand that part. Like, oh, girl, like I know. This is like, oh, actually, I think this is more 1600s. I don't think they give a date, but there's a powder wigs for men and women were in style. So that's more 1600s, isn't it? So I understand women were kept ignorant about pretty much everything, but still, like, does she understand that she had sex? Anyway, and Kate is like, no, that won't work. Victoria's gorgeous. We look nothing alike. And then the evil stepmother kind of shatters Kate's world and tells them, no, you guys are half sisters. Because up until that point, Kate and Victoria thought this colonel was Marianne's first husband. No, it turns out her father was keeping Marianne as a mistress for all those years. And then when his wife died and she was sickly the whole time, he married Marianne. You know, so Kate's kind of shattered because her image of her father is again wrecked because she just had happy thoughts of her father. And then, especially since she's treated like Cinderella, that kind of kept her going, and now she has to come to the fact of actually looking at her parent like an adult, as an adult looking at another adult. So she kind of has to go through that mind warping discovery, which is never easy. You know, there's a time in all of our lives when we become adults, we start looking at our parents adult to adult, and you know, and the veil lifts, and that's just part of childhood, but it's definitely harder, or part of adulthood. It's definitely harder when said parent is passed away, you know? So she agrees because if she doesn't, Victoria won't be able to marry Algie, and she's pregnant. So it has to happen, right? And we get introduced, so she has to take the dogs with her, which I always enjoy a good dog in a story, you know what I mean? And like Victoria didn't train them, she just treated them like accessories because she, you know, so Kate's training them with cheese and everything. A dog will do anything for cheese, right? So I thought that was cute, really cute. Caesar is the biggest of the Maltese and very protective and brave, but not too smart. Freddie is the smaller of the 3, and he's dumb, but like just loves Kate, you know what I mean? And then there's Coco, who has Jules glued to her, and at first Kate thinks they're glass, but we'll get to that in a second. It's another thing where I was like, what the is going on? So she takes those 3 with her, and Algie, and I thought I wasn't gonna like Algie, you know what I mean? But he was sweet too. He apparently handsome, sweet, but also dumb, but very sweet too. And I really like that. Like, I liked how he wasn't an arrogant ass. I liked how, like, when he was showing kind of insecurities about being at the royal court, well, not the royal court, but at his uncle the prince's castle with all the stuff going on there, you know, he looked really insecure. And I liked how Kate was like, oh, Algie, you look fantastic. I mean, look at, because Algie really cares about fashion. She's like, you look so fashionable. Look at that guy. He's hideous. His fashion's hideous. And she made him feel good. So like we get Kate's character really well through her actions. She's very selfless. She's very stubborn, and she doesn't process her emotions pretty much at all, you know, which given how, you know, she's had to survive since her father died, it makes sense, you know. So and why is it called a menagerie? Because the prince has like lions. He has a lion, he has an elephant, he has a monkey, he has this menagerie that his oldest brother, who is like the Grand Duke, kicked out of his court, so he's taking care of it. And it was such a random thing to have. Like I'm sure it was meant to show how like the prince takes on responsibility that really aren't his to take, but he takes them on to save innocence. Like I get that, and that is a point that is drilled into us over and over again in the story, that the prince takes on everything onto himself to protect everybody, and he thinks and has to do it all himself, you know. So okay. Now the prince, I was really into the prince at first because he's interested in archaeology. He he had a high degree from Oxford. He did a paper about how excavating an archaeological site should be done to conserve the artifacts. And like, I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I love it. I love this shit. I do love that stuff. I know. Nerd. Anyway, so I was really excited about that. It wasn't like just the classical, almost like prince. You know, he actually had hobbies and interests outside of his title, and I loved that. I loved the relationship between him and all his extended family that he has to take care of now, because the older brother kicked them out of the court, so he feels it's his responsibility. He has to take care of them. The thing is, there's so many interesting secondary characters in the castle that like at one point I was like, should I write this down, because I forget who's Toulouse, who's Lord Berwick, who is this Lady Dartmouth? Is there a male Dartmouth, like a Lord Dartmouth? I thought there were, like, I got really confused, so I was like, oh, that's kind of I got so confused about the secondary characters, and they were so bright and colorful and interesting but there were so many, so I forgot like who belonged to what personality quirk, you know, how many uncles and aunts did he have, and like which sister was this, and is this the one that wears the veil, or is this the one that's like super rude? Like I couldn't, like it was a lot. It could be that I'm just dumb, true, but it was a lot. And you know, and like there's a little bit of identity porn going on, you know what I mean? Mistaken identity and stuff like that happens. And at the beginning he's like, maybe I'll seduce Algie's would-be bride, because she's supposed to be super wealthy, because he has to get married to a wealthy heiress to support the castle and all the menagerie, human and animal life, that he's now saddled with. We will stick a pin in that problem right there until I explain the rest and see why. That's basically one of the reasons it's 3 stars, but not the biggest. The biggest. So, you know, he thinks Kate is Victoria, but they find out pretty early that Kate is Kate. With identity, stuff like that. I think it could have lasted a little longer, but I would rather identity stuff like that end sooner than last too long. Because I think if it lasts too long, it gets boring. And, like, you know, the timing has to be just right. But again, I would rather it end a little sooner and think, oh, it could have lasted a little bit longer than it go too long and I'm bored shitless of this. You know what I mean? So that was fine. And the pacing for everything was, I enjoyed it. So, you know, classic Cinderella stuff, right? I will have to talk about one character, though. Her godmother, Henrietta Harry, loved her. She was hilarious. Her personality was a little bit on the modern side, but kept within that time period. You know, she was outrageous, but she's been widowed twice and she's on her 3rd marriage. And like, she has this just sense of not giving a shit, and she still accepted it in court and thought very high, not court, I keep saying court, but it's like, accepted in the ton and still highly like sought after as like a person of prestige. So like she was like a modern-esque woman, but like shaded in that time period, and I think the author did really well with that. So I just found her amusing the whole time. But one of the things that drove me nuts is because apparently Coco with the jewels, that wasn't glass, those were actually sapphires. And Harry loved Coco so much, he basically adopted her. And the maid got the sapphires off so Harry could dress her up in different things. And basically at one point, Kate's like, oh, my dowry is on that dog, glued on that dog. She knows her stepmother did that, you know what I mean? To kind of mess with her. To hurt her again, even without trying. So Harry, and then like we never hear of those sapphires again. The maid just cleans them off of the dog and then they're gone. And I'm like, wait, Kate needs money. The prince needs money. Why is like a huge bit of money just never picked up again? You know what I mean? So I was like, ooh, I hate just dropped plot threads. I hate that so much. So I was like, oh, because especially since the whole book, everybody needs money. And then, oh, look, money. We'll never talk about it again. I'm like, what the... So, Kate knows that the prince has to marry this Russian princess. And what I really loved was that the Russian princess was a sweet person. They didn't villainize her. They didn't make her horrible. She was a kind person that also had to marry. It's not like she loved the prince, and she's here to make the best of it. What got icky sticky for me and made this book just... And the only reason it is 3 stars is because everything else I enjoyed. You know what I mean? So this scene knocked it down 2 points for me. Because it's so icky sticky. So he's basically flirting with the princess. He goes upstairs to his room, starts to have sex with Kate. Then in the middle of that, comes back down, flirts with the princess some more, and goes up and takes Kate's virginity. I was like, this is disgusting. This is icky. This is supposed to be their first, romantic moment, like making love moment in this book. And it is gross. And actually one point, I guess we were supposed to see how tormented and put upon he was. I didn't know. It didn't come off like that. You know what I mean? Because he goes down there and he asks her for a waltz. And he knows the Russian princess for a waltz. And he knows if he waltzes with her, it basically seals their fate that they have to get engaged. So he goes up and starts having sex with Kate. Comes back down in the middle of it. And asks the princess for a waltz when he didn't have to. They have a month to get to know each other. The Russian princess's uncle was very clear that she's adored and she doesn't want to marry him. She's not going to marry him, and no talk of broken engagements. You know what I mean? That's it. There's so many other avenues that could have happened, but the fact that the first love scene of this couple that I really was rooting for happened while he was flirting, in the middle of him flirting with another woman, was gross. I hated it. It was disgusting. It was icky sticky, and Kate deserved better. What the ever love and fuck? Even his half-brother, who is, his, main manservant, was like, this is gross, dude. What are you doing? It was so gross. The godmother was pissed. Everybody was angry, and Kate's well, I could understand Kate's point of view that she knows she can't marry him, so she wants him to have that memory with him of losing her virginity, right? I could understand that. But even when he goes up there, he's like, do you know where I've been? I asked her for waltz. He uses it to hurt her because he's hurting. I was like, F you, dude. F you. I was like, Kate, walk away. But she swallows the pain and she still goes through with having sex with him. This is what I'm saying. Kate she's not in tune with her emotions. You know what I mean? Even reading from her point of view, we're like, wait a minute. What? She's allowed to be upset. She's allowed to be hurt by this. I mean, later she is. But I was like, dude, okay. All right. And then at that point, I hated the prince. Hated him. That scene was so gross to me. And then later on, all this firework, this big ball, and basically he has to make a choice. Kate or the princess. And he doesn't dance with Kate. He only dances with the princess. He gets jealous when Kate's dancing with other men. So basically, to her, he chose the princess. You know what I mean? And there's fireworks for the princess. And he leaves the princess there and he goes finds Kate and they have another sex scene in the garden You know what I mean? And then he goes to escort the princess home to her room, and he kisses the princess. Of course, it's on the nose, but still, it's gross. You know, it's gross. It had the feel of him like we're watching a love interest in a movie or a book or whatever, and like we're watching them cheat on the other person. Like it was so gross to me. And then like Kate sees him kiss her on the nose. She gasps. She runs away. He runs after her. She leaves the glass slipper, and he's like, "I am undone." And I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, ooh, I'm trying not to curse, but if you do, you know, that's, And then 41 days later, she's moping at her godmother's house. Well, there is one thing I have to say between all this madness. That moment at her lowest, she realizes she has her godmother who wants her to live with her and loves her like her own daughter. Her half-sister shows up, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" Because Algie, her future brother-in-law, was so worried about Kate and her heartbreaking that, like, her getting heartbroken, that he wrote to Victoria that she has to come and you have to talk to your sister. Maybe she'll listen to you because I don't want Kate to be hurt. And Victoria runs to the castle to try to help her sister. So in that moment, Kate realizes she has a family. She has this half-sister that's not very smart but loves her. She has her future brother-in-law who was so worried about her and cares for her. You know what I mean? She's a godmother that she just met. And yes, Harry wasn't in her life, but like, she has really good reason. Like, they did a good job of like, why? You know what I mean? A godmother that's like wants to champion her. The godmother that would like take on a monster for her. You know what I mean? So she realized she has a family. And Victoria's like, "You can live with me and Algie will love to have you." And she means it. You know, I was like, oh, that's a really sweet moment. But because the prince is gross and I felt like we watched him cheat on you, I still hate him. But I want you to have a happy ever after with anyone you want. Maybe Toulouse. I don't know. Pick someone else. Maybe the cute half-brother. I don't know. But I'm rooting for you, girl. And of course, it's a romance novel. So if you end up with the prince, as long as you're happy, girl, as long as you're happy, right? And it's 41 days later. And people are messing around the park when her and her godmother are talking. And the moment people are messing around, I was like, oh, it's the prince. And yes, it was the prince. And he goes there to ask her to marry him. Everything's yay. And I'm just like, no. Like, I get the author wanted, like, the moment of like, oh, he came. But it's came to go to be with her, but it's a romance novel. We know he's going to like be the ending couple, ending male of the couple. Like, we know that. So that like surprise never happened. I was just super annoyed because I've read books where the guy F's up really badly or the girl F's up really badly. But they also make up for it enough for the reader, me, to be like, okay, I get it. I want you guys to be together. You know what I mean? So, like, in those 41 days, we're told that, like, he wrote a book on Carthage, which is a point of study he's very passionate about, got published, enough money to sustain the castle for a couple of years. And that he played matchmaker to the princess and Toulouse, which is one of the secondary characters. I kept forgetting who he was, but there we go. I'm kind of interested if they have their own story that overlaps. I would love to read that. And so everything's okay. And I'm like, no, because from Kate's point of view, we saw her heartbreak. And yeah, I guess we saw your devastation too, but since you put yourself in those problems, I didn't feel bad for you. Like, it would have been better if we were with him for 41 days and we saw him trying to matchmake the princess and Toulouse and him always thinking about Kate and like just, guilt, ripping himself apart for how he handled it. Then it would have been like, okay, you made up for it, And the thing about the book, that just felt like it came out of nowhere. Because yes, he's obsessed. He's an archaeologist and his point of study is Carthage. Absolutely. But like, there was no talk of him writing a book. Like, he wrote papers, but no book. Like, I think in the beginning when we're with him and he's thinking about Carthage and he's researching Carthage, like, it would have been so easy for his half-brother to come up like, oh, bring the post. And he's like, oh, did I hear anything from the publishers? Oh, not yet. Darn it. Like, to indicate that the book was already a hopeful straw in the mix to begin with. Because at the end of it, when we didn't get anything about him being an author of a novel, which is very different than, you know, academia paper, you know, academic paper is very different. So it just felt like a quick band-aid that the author did, which was surprising because everything in this book seemed to be so thought out and so researched and so lovely that it was just an odd thing. And again, for me, the prince, like, he didn't make up for him having sex for Kate, stopping in the middle of it, going down, flirting with the princess, going back up to finish. Flirting with the princess, going into the car to have sex with Kate, going back with the princess, flirting with her, and basically telling her, because the princess saw them, and basically telling the princess, oh, that's over, and then running. Like, it wasn't enough. He didn't earn Kate. Kate is amazing. He didn't earn it. You know what I mean? For the reader, he wasn't, if we were in his heartbreak, maybe I wouldn't hate him so much. Okay, I'm done. This went on way too long. Okay. I'm done with my rant. And I will say, I read this author before, a library book. I like her. I liked everything had this kind of hazy feel to it, like I was reading a fairy tale. I enjoyed that. So I'm going to check more of her out. So I don't want too much time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you later. Bye.